So when you're walking by and you see our great legions guys standing there and they offer you a poppy, think of all this. These guys gave their lives. At least you can buy a poppy.
Hard to believe that it's been more than 5 years since the most highly viewed segment of Canadian TV was abruptly cancelled and its star maliciously thrown under the bus. All for no valid reason, well, other than cowardly corporate suits bending the knee to a tiny woke mob of left-wing zealots. I speak of Don Cherry, the coach in Coach's Corner. Now, whether you loved or loathed Grapes, Coach's Corner was must-see TV. You either loved Don for his unvarnished honesty and frankness, which is an endangered species in the world of sports broadcasting today, or you loved to hate Don Cherry as you would love to hate an entertaining villain cutting promos in the bizarre biosphere that is professional wrestling. The point is, millions of Canadians would tune into Hockey Night in Canada every Saturday night at approximately 7:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Coach's Corner was many things to many people, but it was never, ever boring. I make mention of the cancellation of this cherished slice of Canadian culture thanks to the recent release of a new book entitled The Don Cherry Story by his daughter, Cindy Cherry. Cindy Cherry doesn't waste any time cutting to the chase. Thus, she begins the story at the end of the story, namely when her father's tenure on network TV came to an abrupt and shocking end on November 9th, 2019. The first chapter is entitled Poppygate, which is a fitting term given that what happened to Don Cherry was indeed the stuff of scandal. Cindy writes that after 38 years of compelling television, her father was canceled simply for saying, "You people love our milk and honey, and the least you could do is buy a poppy on Remembrance Day." Indeed, let's stroll down memory lane and check out this so-called day of infamy verbatim, shall we?
You know, I was talking to a veteran. I said, I'm not going to run the poppy thing anymore because what's the sense? I live in Mississauga. Nobody wears, very few people wear a poppy. Downtown Toronto, forget it, downtown Toronto. Nobody wears a poppy. And I'm not going to. He says, wait a minute. How about running it for the people that buy them? Now, you go to the small cities, and the rows on rows, you people love, they come here, whatever it is, you love our way of life, you love our milk and honey, at least you could pay a couple of bucks for poppies or something like that. These guys pay for your way of life that you enjoy in Canada. These guys paid the biggest price. Anyhow, I'm going to run it again for you great people and good Canadians that bought a poppy. I'm still going to run it anyhow.
Love you for it.
You know, folks, I have viewed that excerpt over and over and over again. I have analyzed Don's words for any alleged racism or bigotry or xenophobia, and I come up empty every single time. Indeed, Don Cherry was simply speaking the truth. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. He was simply bemoaning that not enough people in Canada take time to honor the war dead and our veterans come November 11th. This is not conjecture. It is the indisputable truth. Indeed, on Remembrance Day 2020, the year after Don was officially fired, by the way, we visited Yonge Dundas Square in downtown Toronto at 10 a.m. to observe how many people were wearing poppies. In other words, we were there at this busy intersection just 60 minutes before the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. All I can tell you is that less than 5%, yes, you heard me right, less than 5% of passersby were wearing poppies that day. Check out the video evidence.
The phrase around this time of year is "lest we forget." Have people just forgotten?
Well, I don't know if any of them really are that interested. You know, they're too busy making money, so they don't consider it a privilege to live in this country.
They want us to forget our heritage and to fill it with a vacuum of their choosing.
The only thing I can say is people probably avoiding places where the people are collecting, right? So, yeah, I don't think it's anything against the poppies themselves.
Well, I'm not entirely sure.
I'm not from Toronto. I'm from Saskatchewan. I think it's more, this is just how I was raised to wear it. I don't know why you don't see it around much here. Perhaps, there's not a lot of patriotism and, inculcated in young people, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, certainly the expression for this time of year is lest we forget. Do you think we've forgotten?
Well, that would be a sad thing to admit. But
Disgraceful, disgusting, and disrespectful. Oh no, was that a little harsh? Is teen cancel culture going to come for me now? Yet the fact that Don Cherry was canceled for speaking the truth makes for more proof in the pudding that freedom of speech is on thin ice these days in Canada. Due to political correctness, or its new name, wokeness, one is forbidden to speak the truth if the truth hurts. That's not freedom of speech, that's censorship. Indeed, Don's words somehow hurt the feelings of the uber intolerant left, or more accurately, these wokesters pretended to suffer from hurt feelings. Finally, these malicious Marxists had some flimsy excuse to derail the career of a common sense patriotic Canadian that they loathe because of, toxic masculinity. And let's not forget the role of one particular Liberal in this saga, namely Ron the Rat MacLean. Indeed, if Don's words were so repugnant, then why didn't Ron object? Rather, as Cindy Cherry notes, Ron was, quote, bobbing his head in agreement throughout the dialogue, gave Dad the thumbs up, and at the end said, I love you for it, end quote.
Anyhow, I'm going to run it again for you great people and good Canadians that bought a poppy. I'm still going to run it anyhow.
Love you for it.
Furthermore, Cindy notes, quote, Hockey Night in Canada repeated this Coach's Corner for their Central Canadian viewers. How bad could they have felt it was if they rebroadcasted it, end quote. But no, the cowardly suits at Rogers caved to the vocal minority, and they quickly pulled the plug on Coach's Corner. And when they did, Ron MacLean could have and should have taken a stand. He could have and should have said words to the effect of, hey, if Don goes, I go. But then again, that would have made for a principled stand. And second banana rats aren't all that concerned about principles, not when there's a juicy six-figure salary on the line. It's just business, baby. To add insult to injury, MacLean appeared the following Saturday to make a groveling apology. And soon thereafter, Hockey Night in Canada went woefully woke in terms of the content aired between periods. It was insufferable and unwatchable.
And I was kind of processing what he was saying and thinking I wasn't in an ideological bubble at all. I might have been in a friendship bubble, but because I was kind of praying that I don't think I'm hearing trouble, but I might be hearing trouble. Anyway, it was done. And then you called us on it, which I thank you for, because that's the new world. You don't have a pulpit like Coach's Corner or the CBC News or the New York Times or the Guardian that just pronounces and that's it. Now you have in real time social media and a kind of a democracy happening, and so you caught it. And knowing what to overlook is wisdom, right? And I felt so bad, and I apologized immediately. And Don, Don, defiant. There were steps that needed to be taken because of what had been said by Don, and he didn't want to do those steps. So he made his choice, and I made mine. And then the next choice, which was a really hard choice, probably the sleepless nights all week are mostly about this. Don's my guy. I'm in a foxhole with Don, and I've decided to go one way and he another. And you say, okay, how can you choose principle over friendship? But I had to.
In the days that followed this cancellation, Cindy became further upset about the spin Poppygate was receiving. She writes, quote, the narrative that Rogers/Sportsnet and Ron put out to the rest of the media was that all Don had to do to keep his job was apologize, and he wouldn't. This is what a lot of the corporate media shills and people on social media humped on. Why didn't Don just say he's sorry and then he would have gotten back his job, end quote. But Cindy says that narrative was completely bogus, that the fix was always in. She further writes, quote, to me, there was no doubt Rogers wanted Dad gone. so they backed him into a corner knowing he wouldn't kneel to their demands. I believe many people knew there was more to the story about Dad's firing, but didn't bother looking into it and just went with the corporate narrative, end quote. In fact, it should be noted that it was never Cindy's intention to write a book, even though she always had a ringside seat when it came to being near her famous father. But there came a point during this raging controversy when she simply couldn't take the BS any longer. She had to set the record straight, and for that, we owe her a debt of gratitude. Alas, it's too bad Cindy Cherry never got to see the fruits of her labor. Cindy passed away last July at the age of 67 after a brief illness. This was very hard indeed on Dawn. Regardless, her legacy is a book that dispels the lies and myths that the left and the cowards at Rogers and Ron MacLean concocted when it comes to the Dawn Cherry saga. We owe her a debt of gratitude for setting the record straight about this great Canadian. Of note, Dawn Cherry is 91 years old. At this point, we must wonder how long this national treasure will be with us. I can tell you this much: when Dawn passes, millions and millions of Canadians will mourn that day. Dawn spoke his mind, told the truth, and stood by his principles, even when threatened with career cancellation, which did indeed come to fruition. One final thought. Dawn Cherry was and remains immensely popular, and once upon a time he was responsible for the single most watched segment of TV in the nation. He was also a cash cow when it came to attracting advertisers and sponsors. In the final analysis, the really disturbing thing about his unceremonious cancellation is this: if the powers that be can cancel Dawn Cherry, they can cancel anyone.